The PlayStation 2 era. Video games had finally existed long enough that games that got their starts in the arcade and NES were starting to get reboots. Ninja Gaiden Black was a reboot of a tough-as-nails arcade and NES platformer, and the game we are going to be covering in this video, Shinobi, is of the same ilk. I would describe Shinobi as a real ball-buster, but its core gameplay loop and stylish presentation make your eventual perfect execution all the more satisfying after struggling with failing over and over again. The thing that instantly catches your eye is the amazing red scarf. I don't know how they made something look this good and fluid on the PlayStation 2 while also still being able to have a stable frame rate. The scarf is like a Disney princess where they made sure it always was looking good. It's such a simple thing that gives this game an incredibly striking and iconic visual flair, so much so that it was even used in the amazing Japanese and European box arts, which us in America sadly didn't get. Instead, we got the standard ugly 3D character model that would soon show its age as graphical capabilities improved, along with a PNG of the game's logo slapped on top of it. Mechanically, I would describe Shinobi as pretty basic. Its core loop is very one note, which sounds really harsh, but what it does with these few systems is incredibly fun and satisfying. This game shows you that you don't need to be as deep as an ocean to have satisfying combat. It's more important to have a solid foundation. Identifying what you want to achieve with the game, focus in on that, and hone it to a sleek razor's edge. And most importantly, make sure it's actually fun to play. Make it so you motivate the players with extrinsic or intrinsic rewards that push them to keep playing and potentially even mastering it. The devs for Shinobi took an, on paper, simple mechanic and built an entire game around it. Now you may be asking what that gameplay actually is, since I've been talking so highly about it yet haven't actually explained it. The story of this game has you playing as a shinobi named Hotsuma, whose voice acting reminds me of DMC3 Virgil with how nasally some of his line deliveries are.
You left the Oboro clan. These are not the affairs of a rogue ninja.
The Oboro are dead! You are the leader of nothing!
Their deaths shall be avenged by my blade. I do not need your help.
The game in general just has that really weird and awkward early 2000s English dub.
My fire shall consume you! Burn!
Some of the combat barks are just hilariously bad, like the sound that Hotsuma makes when he runs through a spider's web in level 3B. Suddenly, this evil wizard shows up and he summons a golden castle in Tokyo and unleashes hell into the world. So you have to stop him since it was your Oboro clan who originally sealed him away ages ago. After the first level, your sword, the Akujiki, is revealed to be an evil mythical sword that drains the yin energy of those it kills. If it cannot be fed, then it starts to devour the wielder. This is represented in gameplay by having a meter constantly drain. If it is fully depleted before you kill a single enemy and absorb the yin energy that they drop, it starts to eat away at your health bar, represented by these white flames around it. You could argue that the game lulls you into a false sense of security with the first two levels not having this system present, making the game seem much easier than it actually is, but I think it was a good idea that they did this. The game allows you to get acclimated with its basic controls and the few other systems present before the real game starts, and oh boy, do you get a reality check once you get to level 3 and the difficulty starts to ramp up. Enemies are no longer pushovers. They start to counter the basic things that you were doing in the previous levels, and you are going to have to adapt or you are going to get filtered by these dogs. Since you are playing a ninja, wall running is present in this game, and if you watched my Bujingai review, then you know that I praised how it worked in this game and wished more games featured wall running like it. In Shinobi, you jump into the air and connect with a wall, and then it leaves you magnetized to it. Unlike in games like Bujingai where you have to hold the X button and push the analog stick in a direction that you want to go in to keep yourself connected to the wall. Shinobi frees your hands up by allowing you to stick to them for free. You can actually maneuver the camera around without having to fight the game's controls. You can actually engage with the enemies without feeling like the game is holding you back. Platforming doesn't feel inconsistent and jank because of it, outside of a few times where I just slid down the wall and didn't connect to it for some reason. I'd gladly lose some challenge and execution to have a system like this where it feels like it's actually my fault if I mess up. It's not perfect, as in level 6A, platforming becomes a real pain in the ass. 95% of the game is either linear platforming in a straight line or vertical platforming up buildings and towers. This is the one level where they thought it would be a great idea to have you jump down these giant shafts where you can't look down and are left to do leap of faith gameplay and hope you don't fall to your death and have to restart the entire level. The camera in this level is just awful, and it's a shame because the rest of the game is nowhere near as frustrating when it comes to platforming. While we're complaining about some of the lackluster aspects of this game, the other thing that is often a problem in games like this is the lock-on. It's the very standard issue of selecting the wrong targets. Since your movement is very fluid and has a good weight to it with the multiple dashes you can do in a row and how you can fly through the air around enemies with precision, the game locking onto a random enemy that wasn't your intention really breaks the flow of combat. This is the case in many games, but it's extra annoying in Shinobi due to the second quirk about your sword I have yet to mention. When entering combat encounters, these orbs appear in the top right corner. The number of orbs corresponds to the amount of enemies you are fighting. As you kill enemies, your sword gains power. Kill each enemy fast enough to keep the meter going, you'll fully power your sword to the point of one-shotting any enemy in the game. This includes bosses. This is the system that the entire game was built around. Power up your sword, kill every enemy in your path, do it fast enough, and you'll get these stylish finisher cinematics that are satisfying to see every time you pull it off. I always harp on about how if a boss has mobs in the fight with them, all that tells me is that the boss is not interesting enough to be fought on its own. This game is the exception to that rule because it bases the entire thing around having these extra mobs so you can one-shot bosses stylishly. It is also important to note that these adds in the boss fights are not nearly as aggressive as the ones you would find in other games. They have more in common with the wiry horrors of Garo to build up time for your armor, or the zombies in Doom Eternal you chainsaw for ammo. You focus these guys down, fly through the arena with precision, all working towards that sweet insta-kill. So with that being said, I think you can imagine how annoying it is in this game if you have a chart plotted out of the enemies and the order you want to kill them in, and then the game suddenly decides you're going to target something completely unrelated. It turns something that should have been a breeze to completely disorienting you and messing up your timing. It wouldn't nearly be as bad if your sword kept the power longer or wasn't on a timer at all, but then we'd arguably be playing a completely different game, or at least a much easier one. Now that I've explained the mechanics of this game and its core loop, I want to talk about how it does some very small things that I think kept it from getting super frustrating. This game does have a rating system at the end of levels, but I felt like it was really fair in how it scored you. While it does track time, it doesn't seem to factor in. You can still get an A rating even with the only thing not successfully done is taking no damage or not finding all of the collectibles. Levels aren't super long and are well paced, so even if you have to restart them from the beginning if you die or fall into a pit, then it doesn't feel like you're wasting your time having to run through everything again. The biggest thing for me is that if you hit restart in a boss fight, it starts you at the fight itself instead of at the beginning of the level. It also doesn't penalize you if you restart, even with bosses. So if you are going for a no damage run and manage to get through the level just fine without getting hit, only to be then tagged by the boss, if you hit restart, you can fight the boss just fine, and you aren't penalized for it. This all goes back to that extrinsic-intrinsic motivation I mentioned earlier. Personally speaking, I respond much more to intrinsic motivation. If I'm going to learn how to execute perfectly, and it's going to have a learning curve to it, then the end result better be stylish as hell and feel good to pull off. I also expect the game to work flawlessly if it expects me to execute flawlessly. A lot of games, even this one in a few instances, don't do this, which makes that difficulty feel bad, like the game isn't upholding its end of the bargain. So I think having these little quality of life features goes a long way in helping me keep wanting to be able to pull off one-shotting bosses. Otherwise, I would have just gotten tired of it, saw trying to do this as a waste of time because the game was jank or annoying, and then beat the game whatever way I could. Ratings and style be damned. I think it's something important that often is rare to find in games that keeps me wanting to play within its logic and rules, when I could do something often game-breaking otherwise. There's not really much else to say about this game. Similar to how I've described games like Crash 4 and Gungrave in the past, it has its basic premise, solid core mechanics, and a bunch of levels to play with them in. Also, with how I described Gungrave, Shinobi feels like an arcade game you've never heard of ported to consoles, and that makes sense given the game's lineage. It's unfortunate that this has the worst final boss of all of the PlayStation 2 action games we've covered so far. Remember that evil wizard I mentioned earlier? Well, he casts some magic to turn himself into a Tumblr sexy man, and you have to beat him to save the day. Fighting this boss took me longer than my entire playthrough of the rest of the game combined. Yeah, diagnosis, skill issue, I get it, but my god did this make me want to drop the game and really soured my whole experience with it. First off, each time you attempt to fight him, it opens with this weird non-starter. I don't know if you want to classify this as a phase 1 or an interlude to the real fight. It kills all hype and momentum you could have with the boss fight, ignoring the fact that the rest of it is just as bad, if not worse. He doesn't have a health bar, he just laughs at you, teleports around, shoots some magic at you. When you swing your sword at him, it goes right through him. There isn't even any music when this happens, just this awkward silence.
I call forth the fires of hell!
It really felt like I was missing something or that I was experiencing a bug, but no, that's just how the fight always starts. Eventually, when swinging at him, there will be this shattering glass effect and his health bar will finally appear and the real boss fight starts. The enemies he has accompanying him to power up your sword are these floating talisman monsters. For some reason, the game just freaks out when fighting them. I found my sword just slashing right through them and somehow missing. The lock-on I mentioned earlier is by far the worst here. Even if you manage to fully power up your sword, Wizard Dude has a lot of seemingly random invincibility frames and teleports around to random parts of the arena, which is double if not triple the size of the others you fought in up until now. So if he teleports away from you, you are definitely not going to hit him before your sword's power up expires. Half of the places he teleports to are floating over the edge of the platform you are fighting on, so it can be really awkward to try and hit him and not fall to your death and instantly get a game over. With all of this combined, it feels like he never has an opening, or at least one that you can distinguish from all the other times that appear to be exactly the same as when you swing and deal no damage to him. It's a coin flip whenever you approach the dude and find out if your sword is going to connect with him or just go right through dealing 0 damage. All the while you have to hear his really annoying voice lines over and over again. And if you fall to your death or die, you have to do this stupid non-starter, which sometimes lasts longer than others seemingly for no reason. I'm sure someone has already said in the comments why I am a moron and completely missed some facet of this boss fight that makes it incredibly easy, which is completely fair, but usually you find yourself thinking back on games fondly even if they are kind of meh as long as they end on a high note. Shinobi is the opposite, where I think back to this game and instantly have negative emotions flooding into me because of how much I hated this final boss, and then I have to remind myself that, oh wait, I really liked the rest of the game. It's such a shame that it ended on the worst note possible. The final cutscene ends with Hotsuma appearing to sacrifice himself in the collapse of the Golden Castle, after beating Wizard Man and returning him to his original pruny form, hoping to seal away Akujiki. This would then be followed up with a sequel, Nightshade, which I haven't finished at the time of making this, but so far, as of Stage 5, everything that Shinobi did to make its simple premise fun and satisfying to play, Nightshade fails to recapture. I'll cover Nightshade at some point, either in its own review or in a compilation video of the bad PlayStation 2 action games I've played for a bit for this video series before dropping them to play games that I think are worth my time. As of right now, that compilation video will be called Obscure PlayStation 2 Action Games, The Bad Batch. I don't know when it will happen, because as of right now, I would rather focus on the PS2 action games I really enjoy and want to recommend to people. If you want to see the games I plan to cover in this series, I have a list on Backlogged which will be linked in the description below that you can check out. If you've made it this far into the video, I just want to say thanks for watching as always. If you really liked the video, please leave a like and a comment. And if you really want to help support the channel, maybe consider becoming a patron on Patreon. All patrons get access to videos a day early, along with a $7 tier that gives you access to rough cuts of upcoming videos. I'm now going to shout out all of my $5 and up patrons who really help support the channel. Akita Fishkiyama, Bully, Densha, Francis, Jeff Lad, Kohai Carmen, Cosmonaut Cola, Medi Not the Bad Guy, NM, Alex, Quanner, Hardleg Joe, Nathan Redding, Nemphy, Quartz, Revin, Rovit, Ruben Rodriguez, Samuel Egan, Sayan Heg, Sir Newt Newt, Walkman, Ben Johnson, Brian Marcello, Bergnut, Chichometrius, David Roberts, Dusty the Zombie, Ek Frazo, Elliot Morton, Filthy Fingers 69, Fishkami, Justin Collini, Tax Mark Chick, Kevin Velasquez, Lotto, Lucy the Fox, Megan, Nicholas Pedinato, Onion Girl, Slemph Tingle, Solid Link, Starcasters, Some Panda, the FOE3, and William Moore. Thanks so much, guys. If you're a card game player of any kind, I have a TCG Player affiliate link in the description below. Any purchases you make will give me a small kickback. I also have a NordVPN affiliate link in the description below with a discount code on a 2-year plan. As for what's coming out next, honestly, at the time of recording this, I have no clue. Maybe I'll stick to doing more PlayStation 2 action games, maybe I'll do some of the multi-reviews I've been considering recently, or maybe I'll do something else completely unrelated. A bunch of my most anticipated games of this year are coming out very soon, so expect videos on those games soon. Whatever ends up coming out next, I hope you enjoy, and as always, thanks for watching and see you next time.